I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Character Matters on this beautiful, at least it is where I am, May the 4th, 2014. And what a pleasure it is to be with you again tonight, and what a pleasure it is to be in this wonderful land where we are great when our people are great. And it's my personal mission to talk about the character crisis that I think we're in and the problems that it's caused and what we really need to do about getting back on track and being all that we can be, both individually and as a country. Character does matter, hence the title of this program. And that's been the area of work that I've focused on for almost 30 years. And tonight, as we get into the discussion, we're going to be talking about just what it is to have a personality or a character disorder and the kinds of problems that can cause in relationships. So we'll be talking about that later on in the program, but I have a lot of things to mention before then. And if you want to join the discussion, or if you want to make a contribution to the program, or if you have a story to share, a question to ask, anything at all, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We'd love to have you join the discussion. Get a little bit of business out of the way. As you know, I've mentioned many times, not only written many books, but I do a lot of blogging on the internet, and I write for my own blog at www.manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. And this past week, just posted an article that I think you will enjoy. It's the beginning of a series. The article I posted is the first in a series of articles on commonly misused psychology terms. And these are not only terms that are misused in the general public, but these are terms that even professionals misuse a lot. And this past Friday's post, which you can view on my website, is titled Acting Out and Other Commonly Misused Psychology Terms. This post deals with popular conceptions about that term, acting out. I was prompted to write this article as I was driving home one day and listening to a fairly popular commercial on the radio. I hear this a behavioral therapist, self-styled behavioral therapist, and his wife have a series of DVDs and tapes that they sell and promote over the radio, guaranteed to cure all kinds of problems. And heard this guy in hawking his product mention that his method could help you cure all your child's acting out behavior in school. Well, I got news for you. Most of the time, acting out in school is not acting out at all. Most of the time, what we're talking about is misbehavior. And misbehavior is not, as so many are wont to say, misbehavior is not acting out. Intentionally acting a fool or behaving badly or behaving irresponsibly, being disruptive, this is not acting out. So even though this guy claims that his method will cure your child's acting out in school, in fact, your child is not suffering from that, more than likely. I'm not going to get into that. If you want to find out more about what acting out really is and why you might sometimes need a cure for it, you can go read the article for yourself at www.manipulative-people.com and learn all about it. And then you can keep up with the series over the next few weeks, and I'll be talking about several other misused terms, not just misused in the general parlance, but also misused very often by professionals of one type or another, even mental health professionals. It's just amazing to me how many terms are thrown around with fairly loosely. You know, in the medical profession, it's very important that that words mean things, that our terminology means something. We have to be able to talk to one another as professionals and to be able to communicate in a way that another professional knows exactly what we're talking about when we use a certain term. So when a neurosurgeon says to another neurosurgeon, I've evaluated this patient and I think they have a subdural hematoma, the other neurosurgeon knows exactly what he's talking about, he or she is talking about. And this matters. So it matters that we use terms correctly, and I think you'll enjoy this series if you have a chance to go to the website and take a glance at it. First article in the series posting last Friday. Also, there was a new post on the other blog that I write for. The title of the blog is Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life. And the website is Counseling Resource, and that can be found at www.counseling, with two L's, by the way, www.counselingresource.com. And just go to the blog tab and you'll be directed there. I have an excellent article that fits very well with what we'll be talking today about a little later on in the program, about personality and character disturbances and personality and character disorders. The article on the Counseling Resource site is Affection and Approval, two things that matter for character. In the character development, when we're growing up, in child rearing, there appears to be almost nothing more important to character development than two factors. We've looked at many outcome studies over many years, and for years researchers have said the same things, and clinicians who are seasoned in any way in the mental health sciences also know this to be true, that two things really matter when it comes to building character in children, and that is that love is freely and unreservedly and unconditionally expressed. We know that folks come out of their childhood experiences and have what it takes to function well in life and to be good folks when they have experienced abundant love freely and unconditionally given in their childhood. The other thing, however, that matters is not so free and is not so unconditional, and that's approval. Approval, especially for behavior. So you parents out there, keep this in mind. These are the two things that really matter. And if you want to read the article I've written about this, I'd suggest you go to the Counseling Resource website. Once again, that's www.counseling.resource.com, and read the article I have there that summarizes the research over the last several years, including mentioning some recent studies that seem to question what we've known for a long time about the key roles of these two factors. Some studies were beginning to question whether or not conditional approval, or what they called, quote, conditional parenting, end quote, was really all that healthy. Here's the problem, however. The studies that questioned this finding, they confused approval with displays of affection. And as we already knew, it's important for children in their character formation to have the experience of love unconditionally. And how that is generally expressed is through affection. So we already knew that affection should be unconditionally and freely shown. So actually these two studies that appeared to question conditional parenting really didn't do a good job in formulating their research. They didn't do a good experimental design to test their hypotheses. But to make a long story short, what really matters to character formation, and we're going to get into that in a little bit more depth when we talk about what shapes up a personality to become perhaps a personality disorder in later life. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We'll also talk about what it's like to live or work with someone who has a personality or a character disorder, because that can be a living hell, as many of you know. And perhaps some of you have stories to tell about that or questions to ask. I get questions. Most of the questions I get asked on the blog and on the back channel. I have a feature on my blog at www.manipulative-people.com. I have a feature there where you can contact me via email, via the back channel. And I get far more questions about two things more than anything else. One, people ask, will this person that I think has a personality or a character disturbance or disorder, will they or can they ever change? Is it just simply hopeless? Are they always going to be the person they are? And am I better off just cutting bait and getting out of this relationship, finding another job if I'm working with somebody with a character disorder? Do I just get out while the getting is good, or before things get any worse? Or do I trust that maybe with time and the right intervention, things can get better? So that's the number one question I get. The number two question I get is, well, if there is hope, how do I get help? Because everything I have tried, every therapy experience that I've had has not panned out. I didn't get the help I needed. In many cases, folks report that they dragged their character disturbed spouse or partner or child into the therapy experience, coerced them in some way, maybe threatened to leave or threatened one thing or another if they didn't get some quote-unquote help. So they drug them into the therapist's office only to be just horribly disappointed. For one thing, the person didn't get any better, and for another thing, many times folks feel like the therapist got bamboozled. And that can happen because personality and character disturbances are such that you can get bamboozled, especially with certain types of disorders, and we'll talk about that in more depth in just a little bit. So if you're one of those folks who's been in a relationship with a person that you suspect has a personality or a character disorder, or if you just have some general questions about personality and character disorders, or if you have some experiences to share. Many folks who have called into the program have read some of my articles. One of my 3 books, either In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. That's the 18-year bestseller, now about to be published in its 14th language. We have the 12th and 13th foreign publications going to press right now, and working on a 14th. What an incredible shelf life, as they say in the book business, In Sheep's Clothing has had. It's really unusual for a book that's been out that long to sell better every year, and with no end in sight. But that's been the case with In Sheep's Clothing, because it's gotten to be the guidebook, the go-to book, the definitive handbook on how to understand and deal with the manipulators in your life, including those folks that I call the covert aggressive personalities, the archetypal wolves in sheep's clothing, who can look so good on the outside and who can charm the socks off of just about anybody, but who underneath their mask of civility and their mask of congeniality, they harbor this will to dominate and control, and they do their best all the time to get the better of you. And as I say in my book, In Sheep's Clothing, dealing with such people is like getting whiplash. You don't really know how bad you have it until long after the damage is done. You don't really know what's hit you. You get conned early on in the relationship. Perhaps the charm that these folks are capable of bowls you over, and you get swayed and you get misled, and you think you're in for a joyride, but in fact you get taken for an entirely different kind of ride when you get in a relationship with these folks. So that's why 18 years running, In Sheep's Clothing is still going, and I sure do appreciate the support I've gotten for that book. It's what helps me stay in retirement, frankly, folks, which I really enjoy. Of course, in my retirement, I'm busy doing other things. I no longer practice every day, but I do consultations via Skype to folks all over the world. I post these blog articles on my blog and on the Counseling Resource blog. So I do a lot. Plus this program, Character Matters, every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I also want to mention my other 2 books, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, Character Disturbance is my second book, and in it, I wanted to give the average person, this is the layman's guide to understanding all types of personality and character disorders. As you know, we'll be talking about personality and character disorders in the program tonight. But if you really want to understand them in depth, know all the personality types, what's the difference between just having a personality? Of course, everybody has some kind of personality, right? What's the difference between having a certain kind of personality and having a personality that's disordered? A personality that is either so inflexible or so adverse in its traits that it makes it difficult for the person to function well, either occupationally, socially, or in their intimate relationships. So that's what character disturbance is all about. And the reason it's subtitled The Phenomenon of Our Age, that ought to be self-evident from the intro of the program here, but it's worth reiterating. Times were, in days past, when mental health professionals treated basically symptoms of mental disorder or disease that folks had who were basically decent folks in character, but who were struggling perhaps with a bout of depression. Maybe they were having a problem adjusting to a difficult stress in their life, and were not functioning up to speed because of that. Maybe they even had a little depression mixed in with that. So for the most part, for many years, mental health professionals dealt with people of pretty solid character who were having a rough time of it. You know, maybe a disaster occurred. Maybe there was a significant loss, and maybe a person who had been functioning at a really high level wasn't able to do it anymore. The stress got the better of them, and they really needed some supportive counseling. Maybe they even needed to work through some unsettled issues. Maybe they had some baggage from a former relationship or baggage from their childhood that they hadn't worked out. Maybe they even managed to come out a decent person out of a pretty bad circumstance in their family. Maybe there was trauma of some type when they were growing up. Maybe they were even subjected to some kind of abuse or neglect. Maybe because of that, they're struggling with some unresolved issues and it's affecting them. So this is what, for the most part, mental health professionals dealt with over the years, and we have been trained to deal with these kinds of problems primarily, and we have a lot of effective treatments these days for those kinds of problems. However, what we didn't anticipate what's occurred in the last 30 or 40 years, and that is a relative explosion of sorts of individuals whose problems stem not so much from the disasters that have occurred to them, being folks of very decent character and not having asked for the disasters, but they simply befell them, but rather folks whose disasters in life really turned out to be self-made disasters. They were disasters created by the shipwrecks that their way of doing things created. Their personalities were the problem. Their character was the issue. The way that they prefer to see the world and to deal with the world, that defining their personality, that in itself was the problem. And these kinds of personality and character disturbances have become the norm these days for folks who seek help. Generally, they don't seek help on their own. freely. A person doesn't usually look in the mirror and say, boy, I am a mess. People who are kind of a mess in personality, they don't think they're a mess. We have a fancy word for that in psychology, talking about terms and how they're misused and how they're correctly used sometimes. We have a big fancy term for that in psychology. We say that the symptoms of personality and character disturbance are often ego-syntonic. What does that mean? Well, that means that to the person's ego, to how they feel about themselves, their self-awareness, they think they're fine. Now, others might have a problem with them. Others might think, man, that person drives me crazy. The way they do things, the way they see things, the way they treat people, the way they use people, the way they neglect their responsibility, the way they lie, cheat, exploit, the way they con, they drive me crazy. They're just not good people. But you know what? As much as I think that there's something wrong with them, they think they're fine. As a matter of fact, they not only think they're fine, they think there's something wrong with me. They think there's something wrong with everybody else. They think everybody should be just like them. Well, that's this big fancy word that we have, and I explain it all in my book, Character Disturbance. That's this big fancy word we have called ego-syntonic. Means that the person who has the personality or character disturbance or disorder, they don't think they have a problem. Everybody else around them that has to deal with them, they know in their gut that the person has a problem. And true, if they get drug into therapy, they could get all kinds of diagnoses. These days, what I will call the diagnosis du jour, that means the more popular and frequent diagnosis given to folks who act all kinds of a fool, is bipolar disorder. Now, bipolar is a real disorder, folks. Don't misunderstand me. I am not poo-pooing bipolar disorder. But there are many times when this is the diagnosis given to somebody who really is not suffering primarily from bipolar disorder, but really is suffering from a personality disorder. Often, the personality disorder is a narcissistic personality disorder. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But they'll get the label of bipolar disorder. Now, why will they get that label? Well, here's the reason. Because a person with a personality disorder will behave badly. They'll behave impulsively. They'll behave erratically. Their moods will be wild. They'll be unpredictable. And we can, nowadays, give folks medicine that will help them control their impulses, that will help them stop and think before they act, that will help calm them down a bit, that will help level their moods. And when we give such medicines, especially the medicines that were originally meant to treat true bipolar disorder, if you're going to give those medicines, boy, you better, if you're going to get reimbursed by insurance and if you're not going to get questioned about the soundness of your practice, if you're going to give those medicines, you better diagnose the person with that diagnosis, even if that's not the real issue. Even if the real issue maybe is that the person has a personality or character disturbance or disorder. So that's why that diagnosis has become a real popular one. Another popular diagnosis these days is of one type of addiction or another. It's not uncommon for folks who have sexual behavior problems, who exhibit a lot of sexual behavior irresponsibility. They don't stay faithful in their marriages, or they behave so irresponsibly that they are at risk for various diseases and for lots of hardships in relationships. But if they behave very irresponsibly in that arena, we are quick these days to slap the label of addiction on them and send them to these rehab places, some of them very posh places, that operate on the models that were originally designed to treat alcoholism. And there's no doubt in my mind that in some cases, I have seen them, I have actually seen, and I've treated myself, some cases where sexual behaviors have taken on an addiction-like quality, and folks have developed what I would consider to be a true addictive pattern. But most of the time, what we're really talking about when we're talking about someone who simply cannot behave responsibly, whether it be sexually, whether it be with respect to decency in the conduct of their interpersonal relationships, whether it becomes, whether it has to do with how well they treat their spouse or their partner. When folks behave irresponsibly, it's usually a matter of character. So we're going to start the discussion about personality and character and just what is a personality disorder or a character disorder. We're going to start that discussion in just a couple of minutes here. So, and if you want to be a part of the discussion, I encourage you to call in at area code 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. You don't have to have a particular question, but if you do have a question, I'd be happy to address it on the air. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to give identifying circumstances, especially if you want to share a story. You know, this is a forum for people to learn about character. And sometimes there's no better way than to communicate to somebody else by sharing an example firsthand that you have been in a relationship with someone you know has a personality or character disturbance, and telling your story and sharing with folks the nightmare you've been through. There's no better way sometimes to give folks the information that they need to be protected and get the help that they need. But just one more thing before we get into discussion of personality and character disturbances. I want to mention one other thing. You know, I play the theme song at the beginning of and end of each program. It's a patriotic theme song. You're well aware of that now. It seems odd for a program of this type, but the reason I chose to play it is not just because I own the song and therefore I can play it without paying a royalty for it, but the other reason is because I really do believe in my heart that there is such an inextricable interrelationship between the precious freedom that we hold in this country and character, that I really want to touch people's heart with this song and make them realize where America's greatness really lies. It has never, ever lied in our military might or in our economic power. Our greatness as a country, like de Tocqueville proclaimed, has always lied in the greatness of our people. When people are of really good, solid character, and you leave them alone, the government leaves them alone, gives them maximum freedom, they will prosper, and they will not only prosper, but they will bring everybody else along with them for the ride. They'll innovate, they'll create businesses, they'll create opportunities, and they'll create, above and beyond all else, prosperity, a prosperity that we've enjoyed in this country for an unprecedented degree of time until this character crisis hit. That's exactly when our prosperity started to wane. Because we were turning out too many people coming out of school, not thinking about what they could contribute and what opportunities they could create and what opportunities that they would create for others and what things that they would innovate. They weren't thinking that at all. What they were thinking of is what they could get. What's the maximum I can get from somebody else for the least amount of work I have to do? And when that happened, when our culture of narcissism and entitlement took hold, America's prosperity began coming to an end. And we're the first generation right now. We're right now in the first generation that is likely not to do any better than their parents, maybe a little worse. What a tragedy in the last best hope of freedom on earth. What a tragedy. And all because of the character crisis. So what I want to say about that is this song means a lot to me. You can find out more about it by going to my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com. That's DRGEORGESIMON.com. There's a whole page on that website, tells you all about it. It's got links to the YouTube videos. You can go to the YouTube website and Google America My Home or Google Anthem for the Millennium or even Google Patriotic Songs America, and you will be directed to several of the videos that are performances of this piece. It is meant to be a fairly large venue performance piece, and we're rolling into that time of the year now where we have lots of patriotic celebrations coming up. Memorial Day coming up in just a few weeks, Memorial Day weekend. We always get a lot of requests for performances of the song then, and then Flag Day, of course. That's not as big of events. And then, of course, July 4th, the Independence Day celebrations, and then a couple of months after that, Veterans Day. So this period of time that we're coming into, where there are patriotic events brewing, this piece is meant for them. CDs are available where you can have the orchestral tracks and do a kind of karaoke performance to the piece, or you can get the scores for the song and help carry the message that America's greatness is all about the greatness of its people, not about its military might or its economic power. That all will come with character. And speaking of that, I had the great fortune, just by happenstance, to meet a person. I'm not going to give his name. I met a person last week who was part of putting together the foundation that was born out of the book and the movie Lone Survivor. And you can go to the website at lonesurvivor.org. And I have to tell you, you will be touched by the story. If you haven't seen the movie yet, see it. It's a great movie. The book was equally great. It's a true story. The movie was very true to the book. So I happened to encounter this gentleman who was instrumental in helping this foundation. And with performances of America My Home, I have been, when this is not a money-making proposition by any means, but when we sell CDs for performances, we've been giving a portion of the proceeds to the Wounded Warrior Project. Well, after hearing the story of the Lone Survivor organization, the foundation, and after hearing the story behind, the true story behind the movie and the book, I've decided that we will also now be making donations to that organization with every bit of sheet music that is purchased and every CD for performances of the song at patriotic venues. So I'm pleased to do that. I was touched by this story, and it's the least that I can do. So I invite you to visit that website as well. That's lonesurvivor.org. You can also find out more information soon on my blog. I'll be posting some information on both my blog and website. And as of course I mentioned before, you can find information on the song on both my website at www.drgeorgesimon, that's drgeorgesimon.com, and my blog, www.manipulative-people.com. If you want to join in, 718-717-8296, 718-717-8296. We're going to roll into the discussion here of personality and character disturbances and disorders. So just what is a personality disorder anyway? I guess before you get to the idea of a personality disorder, you really need to define some terms about what is personality. For a long time, we had this view of personality as being the mask, the social mask that a person wore. A false self. People still think of it this way. As a matter of fact, I'm a part of a discussion group where people still use this formulation. These are folks who study the Enneagram and study the Myers-Briggs and study other personality tools that were developed quite some time ago. And the old thought about personality is that it's not the real person. It's the mask the person has learned to put on based on their fears and insecurities and the defenses that they've built over time. It's the social facade that they present to others, and it masks the true self underneath. Well, that's one definition of personality, and it is sometimes a somewhat valid view of personality. But it is not the dominant view anymore. We've done a lot of research in the last 40 years, and what we now know is that a lot of things go into making up someone's personality. There's a lot of factors that contribute to it, some of which we never wanted to consider before, and that being the genetic or biological side. We never wanted to consider, we were hesitant to think that some traits simply came along with our biology. But now we're learning that some traits just do come that way. We've been forced to recognize that certain traits that help comprise our personality are conferred to us by our biology, whether it be directly through genetics, whether it be through some aspects of our constitution, such as our temperament, or whether it has to do with our emotional wiring, so to speak, or the influence of hormones during various stages of our development. We now know that biology plays a role in shaping our personalities. That's just one factor. Of course, then the other factor is our learned experience, things that happen to us, sometimes trauma. Sometimes it's the things that don't happen to us. I stress this repeatedly in character disturbance. And if you don't get character disturbance for any other reason than to see the stories of folks who exemplify how a person can turn out really flawed in character and cause all ends of trouble for people in relationship, not so much because of what happened to them, but because of what didn't occur, what they didn't get in the way of good life coaching, what they didn't get in the way of learning certain important life lessons, what they didn't get in terms of good role modeling, what they didn't get in the way of sound discipline. And boy, next week, I urge you to tune in next week because we're going to be talking about discipline, and we are going to be talking about the failures of what I call the new discipline. I have an article that's going to be coming out on counselingresource.com, and it's going to be talking about the common denominator in all the instances of going postal. Remember that phrase from back in the years when people seemed to be post office workers? They were the ones going over the edge. They were so stressed they'd come back to the post office and shoot everybody up. Well, now these kinds of events happen everywhere. They happen in schools. They happen on army bases. You know, some disgruntled somebody comes back and starts blowing everybody away, right? Now we call these folks angry depressives. Whatever the case, there is one common denominator because a person doesn't have to be depressed to do this. They don't even have to be angry to do this. Although it's hard to imagine. I know it seems counterintuitive. But the common denominator is, in all of this, is that whatever sets these folks off, whatever is the trigger, is almost irrelevant to the common denominator, which is they don't have the controls inside. They don't have the internal controls, the internal ability to deal with their stress in a way that doesn't take out a half a dozen people. That's the key. You know, I know all kinds of people are under all kinds of stress. It's a very stressful time. Most folks that I know are working double time just to make ends meet, plus trying to raise their kids, trying to manage their homes. It's tough. It's always been tough, and it's tougher now than it's ever been. Our period of prosperity began waning long time ago. And we are now in an age where things are pretty tough for a lot of people, and especially for folks working relatively unskilled jobs, grinding it out, many times 2-wage earners, barely grinding out enough to make ends meet, and in some cases falling short. It's very tough to meet all your responsibilities. But not everybody, when they're stressed, goes postal. Not everybody wants to take out family, friends, neighbors. Not everybody wants to shoot everybody in the household and then go out for more. And all the laws that we've tried to pass to stem these kinds of things are futile. You know, we witnessed this a few weeks ago, the same thing, where a student didn't have a gun when he went into school. He had a knife, and he stabbed several people. You can't take everything away from people and then expect that we will then be safe. That's never going to happen. In prison, they make weapons out of common, ordinary objects. They find metal to turn into shivs. They take bed springs. They take. If you have a mindset that you're going to do damage to somebody, you're going to be able to do the damage somehow. You know, I got a call coming in. I'm going to conference this call in just a second here. Let me see if I can do this. Hello. Welcome to Character Matters.
Yes, I listen to your program and I just love it. It's so great information.
Thank you very much.
And yes, I have now all 3 of your books.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, and I'm
the one.
studying and reading them and studying them. And I was wondering about the consultation via Skype. You talked about that.
About the consultations via Skype?
Yes.
Yes, I do consultations. As a matter of fact, you'll see this week, midweek on my blog, I'm going to be posting details about how that works. And so
Okay.
for the benefit of the listening audience, I'll explain it to you now. I do consultations via Skype that are limited in both time and scope. The subject matter has to be confined to the material in my books. And so what I do is I spend time to expand upon and clarify the principles that are in my books and use illustrations from the experiences that you might share with me about how to put those principles into practice. And so that's how I do those Skype consultations. The initial consultation, for time's sake, has to be limited to a maximum of 2 hours. And then there is a possibility of a follow-up limited to 1 hour at 4 to 6 months after that. So that's how it goes. And I also ask that folks be familiar with my books, so that you're already there. If you've got each one of the books, and you've done some reading already, I trust.
Yes, I did. I'm right now in the Judas book, and I wrote the wolf in sheep clothing, and I started also with the other one. So I'm half through with the other one with the character disturbance.
Wonderful. Do you have a favorite so far?
I like them all.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, they're all slightly different, and of course, the Judas Syndrome is my first book for the Christian audience, and it's an entirely different flavor, but it still incorporates a lot of my material. But so if you're familiar with my work, that really helps, because then that prepares you to ask the right questions. And I also suggest that people send me via email in advance the questions that they want addressed, so that I can prepare myself, because the consultations, we don't want to waste time.
Exactly, yes.
Right down to brass tacks, and that's how it works. So I'd be happy to entertain that for you. And like I said, look for further details on my website sometime toward the middle of the week, okay?
Is it Dr. George Simon, or is it Manipulative?
It's at it'll be posted on the Manipulative People website first.
Okay.
On the blog first. And then the website is managed differently, so it won't get posted there for a while, but it'll be on my blog, I'd say Wednesday or Thursday of this coming week.
Okay, that's wonderful.
All right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have a question for me tonight, or something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to add something. It's so interesting to listen to you that I don't even want to call in, because then I miss else what you say. But I come out of a very difficult relationship, and when you said, what can I maximum get out for the least, it was like I always put it in the relationship. I put in.
Yes.
I got excuses, and I get, oh, please, I forgot, please call me up, and it was very, very painful, and I'm now, it's like a load falls off my shoulders now. It's like I'm
so glad.
Yeah.
If I might interrupt here for just a second, just for the benefit of the listeners, in Sheep's Clothing, I mentioned a syndrome that I call the slot machine syndrome. I guess that's what you're talking about. Right? Yeah. This is where you're in a relationship with a personality disturbed person, a character disturbed person, and you end up putting in all kinds of emotional time and energy trying to make this thing work. You invest and you invest. Yes. And what I say is kind of like a slot machine. What I say in Sheep's Clothing is kind of like a slot machine. Anybody that's played one of these one-armed bandits knows this phenomenon. Every now and then when you play a slot machine, every now and then you hit just a tiny little jackpot. Not a big jackpot. Maybe it used to be in the old days. I'm dating myself. It used to be a cherry, but nowadays maybe it's like 3 bars or maybe 2 cherries in a bar or something like that, and you get just a little payoff, and it's just enough to keep you sucked in. You think, okay, I've invested, and finally I see a little bit of movement here, a little bit of promise, so I'll stay. I'll keep at it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. Yes.
And by the time you realize that it just isn't going to work, what's happened? You've put in all these years and all this effort, and all you've done is gone broke emotionally. So that's why it's kind of like a slot machine. So that was your experience?
Yeah, yes, exactly. That was the experience, and what also helped me tremendously. I have a good friend, and I told her, please talk to him, and there was a question, and she was just so upset about this, my friend, the way he talked, the way he manipulated. She said it's verbal rape because he twisted her words, and I always thought, okay, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe I have to be more patient, or maybe I have to excuse more. And then afterwards, when I heard that you said, look at the behavior, look at the behavior, look at the behavior, then I finally also was able to tell myself, I can let that go. I have every right to let that go, and not just, okay, feel maybe some kind of, I shouldn't do it because I owe it to him. No. I have to, and then afterwards I felt really free, and I felt God, and I thanked God for that.
Yeah.
And I'm very careful with these decisions, because I think we should take relationships very seriously. We cannot just
And you really said a mouthful there when you talked about your friend's advice to look at the behavior. And this is where I write in sheep's clothing in one of my 12 tools.
Yeah, actually, I read that in your book, Look at the Behavior. But she just told me, look, he's turning the words around. He is twisting the words. Truth was just not a matter for him. Truth was just not an important thing for him at all.
Yeah, do you find this is true? Once you get it, once you understand what's really going on, and you see these behaviors for what they are, especially these manipulation tactics, once you get it and you see these behaviors, then you wonder how come you didn't always see it. Is that true?
Oh, yes, it is true, because in the beginning there is so beautiful talk.
Yes.
And they are so deceiving, and they are so charming, and you just think, it's the most wonderful person in the world.
Yeah.
And then you finally realize you words and behavior, and then, I look at the Bible and in book of James, and you described it so well in the Judas book. And in my eyes, God is always right. Very simple.
Yeah. And another thing I think puts people at a disadvantage, in addition to this being, I'm going to kill this phone because it's going to distract the viewers here. But if you find in with these folks that not only is it hard sometimes to judge the behavior, but it's also at first it's also that the psychology that we had, the old psychology we had, taught us to misperceive some of these behaviors. Like, for example, when somebody's making their excuses for things, we were taught that those rationalizations were defenses against feeling anxious or feeling guilty.
Or low self-esteem, right?
We bought into those notions. So we thought that they were coming from a fearful or a guilty place. We didn't think that they were trying to manipulate us. So the old psychology also had us biased and misperceiving things. And therefore misled us into reading these behaviors the correct way.
Yes, and you explained that so well in your books, and I'm so glad, because I felt very uncomfortable always going to a counselor, and I had already a bad experience with a counselor. And so it's a treasure to find your books. So it's just a matter now understanding them more, because it is your work.
Yes, that's right.
Life work. So it's a true treasure for me, and I thank you so much that you share this. And character counts.
Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. We're going to be running out of time here in just a minute, but I can't thank you enough for calling in. You provided so much information, and look for that information.
I will do that. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.